Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry for the delay. I was having some technical difficulties. Not sure what was going on. I couldn't see myself. But anyway, I am back. And anyway, so for tonight's topic, we're going to talk about different symptoms. So symptoms of fatigue, insomnia, weight gain, gut issues, low sex drive, hard to get out of bed in the morning, crashing in the afternoon, wired at night when you're trying to go to bed, anxiety, depression, hair loss, a general lack of well-being, chronic thirst. But these are all different symptoms of adrenal fatigue. So that's going to be the topic for tonight. I'm going to give it a few seconds. So if you just want to let me know where you guys are joining from, type in the chat where you live. I've got friends from all over the world, so it's always interesting to see who's joining from where. But anyway, I just named off a bunch of symptoms, and it's amazing how many people I talk to that have one or more of these symptoms. And if you have any of these symptoms and you're willing to admit it, give me a yes in the chat. And if you know anybody that has any of these symptoms, that has been trying to deal with them and maybe they haven't had the success they're looking for, go ahead and share this or tag somebody in the comment section so they can check it out. All right. Hey, what's up, Andy from Leesburg, Virginia? Got some new people that just hopped on. Charlie, Suzanne's from near Seattle. So have somebody on the West Coast. Suzanne teaches herbal medicine through Cedar Mountain Herb School. Awesome. Cool. So we will, I'm going to mention a few herbs, Suzanne, and maybe you can add a few more that are good for adrenal fatigue. But adrenal fatigue, I talk to a lot of people that know they have adrenal fatigue, and I talk to a lot of people, and based on their symptoms, it sounds like they do have adrenal fatigue. So all these different symptoms that I mentioned, they're all related to adrenal fatigue. And there's a test, if you're not sure if you have it, there's a test you can do. It's called an ASI, or an adrenal stress index. And what it is, it's a salivary test. Most insurance doesn't cover it. Some might, if you have really good insurance, hopefully your insurance will cover it. But the kind of good news is anybody can order it over the internet. And what you do is you get these 4 tubes and you fill them up with your saliva first thing in the morning, late morning, afternoon, and then in the evening. And what that does is it maps out your levels of cortisol throughout the day. So saliva tests are actually best for cortisol. If you're able to spend a little bit more money, then also get a test that includes your DHEA. And if you can spend a little bit more, have a test that includes your melatonin. But it gets your cortisol levels at 4 times throughout the day. Your DHEA level, which is an indicator of the health of your cortisol rhythm, and your melatonin level, which is an indicator of the quality of your sleep and your circadian rhythm. So all very important stuff. And the interesting thing about adrenal fatigue, it's getting more press, but a lot of the articles I read and a lot of the health practitioners today think that adrenal fatigue is caused by your adrenal glands, which are right above your kidneys. They're pretty small. It's about the size of a walnut. But so a lot of people say that you get adrenal fatigue because your adrenal glands become fatigued. And that's just not the case. It's really due to your brain not properly working. So we're going to talk about that tonight. There are some rare cases of your adrenal glands not working, and one of those cases is Addison's disease. And with Addison's disease, your adrenal glands don't work. But your adrenal glands produce all sorts of hormones. Jackie just mentioned she's tuning in from Fairfax, Virginia. I used to live in Fairfax, Jackie. So maybe we were neighbors. Who knows? I was actually in Fair Lakes. But your adrenal glands, they create cortisol. They create adrenaline. They create testosterone, estrogen, but they create all different hormones. And when you get adrenal fatigue, your brain doesn't send the message to your adrenal glands to release the hormones at the right time. And that's when you can run into issues. Now, another thing with adrenal fatigue is a lot of doctors in modern medicine do not believe in adrenal fatigue. So it's not taught in medical school, and most of the doctors that will kind of look for adrenal fatigue and diagnose it are functional medicine doctors. And I know from experience, I dealt with stage 3 adrenal fatigue 2 different times with 2 different doctors. And excuse me, one of my doctors, basically told me that adrenal fatigue was due to my adrenal glands becoming fatigued. She put me on some glandular medications. She gave me some other things, and it wasn't that effective. So I'm going to share with you what I later did, which was much more effective. And before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about what adrenal fatigue does to your body. But I just mentioned that you can do a test called an ASI, which is an adrenal stress index. And what you want in that test is it maps out your cortisol at 4 different times throughout the day. The first test you do for your cortisol, you want it to be the highest, and that's in the morning. So your cortisol has a circadian rhythm, just like all of your organs do. But for your cortisol, it's kind of activated by light. So when the day transitions from dark to light, that's when your cortisol should be the highest. So in the morning, and then throughout the day, it kind of slopes down. So that's a positive cortisol slope. Kind of think of a ski slope. It starts off high and it goes down. And there was a study, I think it was called the Whitehall study from like 2011 or something. And it studied, I think, 4,000 people. It looked at their cortisol slopes and it followed them. And what it found was having a flat cortisol slope is one of the top indicators of an early death. So this is something you really want to pay attention to. You want your cortisol slope to be high in the morning, lower at night. When it's not, you run into problems. So what are some examples of a poor cortisol slope? Having very low cortisol in the morning. And I mentioned at the beginning some of the different symptoms. So if you struggle to get out of bed in the morning, if you're hitting your snooze button, 3, 4, 5 times, if you need that cup of coffee before you can get going, a big reason for that can be because you have low cortisol. And you want your cortisol to be high in the morning to wake your ass up so you can get out of bed. Another kind of thing is, so you wake up in the morning, you have a low cortisol, you pound a cup of coffee, a Red Bull, a Monster drink, any of these high caffeine, high sugar drinks, those things actually increase your cortisol, they increase your adrenaline. So you get to the state where your cortisol is kind of bouncing around throughout the day. A lot of people with adrenal fatigue, they'll have their coffee, it kind of wakes them up. They get a crash in the afternoon. Then they're driving home, they're kind of tired. They're thinking, I can't wait to go to bed. And then when it's time to go to bed, all of a sudden you get the second wind and you're wired. So has anybody dealt with that before? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Give me a yes if that sounds familiar. And for me personally, that went on for many years, and I had no clue what it was. Now I understand it, and what happens is when you get this spike in cortisol at night, it gives you that wired feeling, and it prevents you from going to sleep. So cortisol adrenal fatigue has 3 different stages. So the first stage is really called when you're stressed. And for some people, it feels kind of good because you're a little bit kind of wired. So when it first starts happening, some people feel like they're more energetic, but when it goes on for a while, it really makes you more edgy. So I'm not sure if anybody can relate to that feeling or not, but you're kind of tense. You're edgy. You can become easily agitated sometimes. So somebody will say something, it will kind of set you off. That can be from having too much cortisol chronically, okay? You can also feel very scattered mentally. So one minute you're kind of working on something, your thoughts are clear, they're lucid, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, what the hell was I doing? You can become kind of scattered. So that's stage 1. The next stage for adrenal fatigue is stage 2, well, obviously 1 to 2, but in stage 2 you feel wired. So it's a higher level of cortisol being pumped out all the time because you're stressed, and you can be even more edgy. And a lot of people can kind of live in the stage 1 and stage 2 for a very long time. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens over years of chronic stress, of eating a poor diet, of staying up too late, of getting blue light exposure in your eye at night. And when stage 3 happens, you become completely exhausted, totally fatigued, and you're crashed. So people can kind of live here in stage 1 and 2 for a while where you're edgy, you're wired. Then all of a sudden, a major stressful event happens in your life. It could be a divorce. It could be your significant other or spouse having an affair. It could be you getting fired. It could be the death of somebody close to you. But a very stressful event can push you over the edge, and the next thing you know, you're exhausted all the time. You don't have these kind of spikes of being wired. You're dragging all the time, and you find it very difficult to sleep. And a lot of people, when I tell them what I do, they kind of open up to me. And this is very common. A lot of people are dealing with this, and it's pretty easy to turn it around if you catch this in the beginning. So if you're in stage 1 or 2 and you're just kind of edgy, you're wired, you're occasionally having trouble sleeping, you fall asleep okay, but then you wake up in the middle of the night, it's relatively easy to turn it around when you catch it at that point. Once you get to stage 3, it takes a lot more work. And I was there twice, at least 2 times that I tested for. And the first time it took me almost 18 months to really turn it around. And my ass was dragging for a very long time. The second time I had a handle on it because I had been through it before, and I learned more along the way of what to do to treat it. So we're going to talk about those things, but I want to spend a minute talking about what happens in your brain and your body when you're going through adrenal fatigue. So you get to the stage 1, 2, and 3 when you become chronically stressed. And we're going to talk about different kinds of stress that can do this. But what happens when you're stressed is your body releases a lot of cortisol. And cortisol in the right amount is a very good thing. So you want cortisol, you need cortisol to live because cortisol regulates your blood pressure, your metabolism, your blood glucose. It's anti-inflammatory in the right amount. But when you get too much cortisol in your blood or in your brain, it can actually become inflammatory. It can cause a lot of inflammation, but it can also affect your memory when your cortisol is off. But it does a couple of other things too. So, for example, your hippocampus is part of your brain, and it makes a lot of the neurons in your brain. And in order for your hippocampus to be able to make these neurons that your brain needs to communicate and function, it needs your cortisol levels to be optimal. So when you don't have that slope of high in the morning, low at night, your brain is not able to make the neurons that it needs to properly function. And it's not just a one-time thing. This happens slowly over time. But if you don't get a handle on your stress, if you don't pay attention to these things, it might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, it might take 2 decades, but eventually these things will catch up with you. So these are just some things to be aware of and start to observe in your life. And if you start to see your stress gets out of control, pay attention to this because it's very important. Chronic cortisol also affects your paraventricular nucleus, which is another part of your brain. It's in your hippocampus. That controls the release and the suppression of cortisol. So when you get a lot of inflammation in your brain, your paraventricular nucleus no longer works. You don't get proper cortisol release. You don't get proper cortisol suppression. What is a huge driver of that? What can really mess that up in your brain? Well, A, chronic stress, like high levels of stress, and B, blue light at night. And that's why I'm always harping on people to really pay attention to your light at night, because you can have a stress-free life, which is very rare, but you can have a low-stress life. You can be eating very well, but if you're chronically getting blue light at night because you're Facebooking in your bed, you're reading your Kindle at night, you're watching TV at night, you're on your computer at night, you're not blocking your eyes, you're not blocking blue light from your eyes, this can really mess up your paraventricular nucleus, and it can cause this whole cascade of events to happen. Now, there's another thing that happens when you get around later stage 2, stage 3, and that's called pregnenolone steal syndrome. And what that is your body takes cholesterol, which a lot of health practitioners will tell you cholesterol is bad. If it gets to a certain level, they'll try to put you on statins. Very bad thing, because cholesterol is the building block for a lot of your hormones. So it makes no sense to take a drug to reduce your cholesterol, because you need cholesterol to create your cortisol. From there, it creates pregnenolone. Pregnenolone goes on to create DHEA. DHEA is a precursor to your sex steroid hormones. So if you have low DHEA as a guy, you have low testosterone. As a lady, you have low estrogen, you have low progesterone. So over time, that's how you can run into trouble. One of the symptoms I mentioned in the beginning of this talk is low sex drive. You get a low sex drive as a guy when you have low testosterone. You get a low sex drive as a lady when you have low progesterone. Hey, real quick, thanks so much for checking out my video, and I hope you're getting lots of value and learning some cool stuff. If you're having challenges with your health, I can help. The main thing I help my clients with is improving their energy at the cellular level. So I'm talking about your mitochondria. And what we know from the latest research is that 85 to 90% of all disease is caused by poor mitochondrial function. So when you fix your mitochondria, you improve your energy and everything gets better. If this is something that you'd like help with, there's a link to my calendar in the description below. Go ahead, you can schedule time for us to talk, and if it looks like we're a good fit, I'll tell you about my program, and if it's something you want to do, we can start working together. I look forward to meeting you, and now, back to the video. That also impacts fertility. So you can start to see how this cascade of events happens, and it starts to impact all these different things. So the main driver is light at night. So late at night, what it does, it affects your brain. It increases your cortisol when you don't want it. It decreases your melatonin when you do want it. And that's why you can't sleep. That's why you get wired at night. And that's why your brain gets the inability to make neurons. So the take home here is chronic stress, whether it be from your job, from your spouse, from your commute, from people in your circle of friends that just bug the shit out of you. Any of those things have the ability to drive your cortisol high and get you in the stage 1, 2, 3 adrenal fatigue situation. Same with blue light at night. Okay, so how do we fix this? And I'm sure that's why most of you are on this talk tonight, because you have one of these symptoms, you're tired all the time, you don't sleep well, you have gut issues, maybe you lost your sex drive, maybe your skin is just really dry, that can be another thing from adrenal fatigue. So how do we turn this around? And the main thing we have to do is we have to reduce inflammation. So there are three main sources of inflammation. One is diet. So inflammatory foods are basically anything processed. So sugar, gluten, pretty much anything in a box. These things all cause inflammation in our body and can impact adrenal fatigue. So we want to eat more anti-inflammatory foods, vegetables, healthy fats, and proteins. And I'm not going to get into foods too much on this talk. Another source is stress. So everybody knows what stress is. So stress can be, like I said, your job, from a spouse, your commute, whatever. Everybody has stress. But if you don't learn how to manage your stress, it's going to catch up with you at some point. When you're younger, you can get away with stress. As you get older, it has a bigger and bigger impact on you. And then the third thing is environmental. So environmental can be the air you breathe. So if you are in a home that has mold, for example, that causes inflammation. If you use a bunch of cleaning products that have bad chemicals in them, some of those chemicals you can't see, smell, or taste, you breathe them in, they cause inflammation. If you're drinking tap water, the EPA did a study, a lot of tap water has lead in it because they used to use lead to solder the pipes for water. Then it leaches into the water. So if you're drinking tap water, you could be potentially consuming lead. A lot of people flush their old pharmaceuticals down the toilet. That can get in your tap water. So you want to avoid tap water because that can cause inflammation. I've had a little bit of a cold, so when I'm not feeling well, I'll drink the best water I can get. Mountain Valley is like a really good brand. Some other good brands are like Pellegrino. You want to drink something in glass, not plastic. But for my day-to-day drinking water, I buy refillable jugs of reverse osmosis water from my grocery store. But reverse osmosis water gets all that crap out. Fluoride in your water, another source of inflammation. Another environmental source of inflammation is blue light from your screens, from energy-efficient light bulbs, LED fluorescent light bulbs, and from EMFs. So you want to keep your distance from your phone. Turn your Wi-Fi off at night when you're not sleeping, and just be mindful of things that have big electric fields, like your dishwasher. You don't want to stand right by your dishwasher when it's doing a cycle, because that's putting off a lot of EMFs that cause inflammation in your body and can further impact your adrenal fatigue. So you really want to do your best to limit inflammation. So I've just, I'm throwing a lot at you guys. If there are any questions, just type it in chat. And if you're watching the replay, type your question. I'll get an alert. I'll come back and answer it. So I'm moving kind of fast here just because there's a lot of information, trying to get it out to you guys. But we just talked about sources of inflammation from diet, from stress, from your environment. What are some things you can do to really kind of manage stress? One of the best things you can do is the practice of meditation. So does anybody on this talk do meditation like daily? Give me a yes if you meditate. But meditation is one of the best things you can do to reduce stress. If you've never done it before, give it a try. Also mindfulness. So just practicing mindfulness is just being aware of your thoughts. So one example could be you're in traffic, somebody cuts you off, and all of a sudden you're like, ah. And just being mindful is just being aware that your face is turning flushed, that it's just saying, you know what, I'm really fucking pissed that dick cut me off. It's noticing that you're tensing up. And it's just becoming aware of that, and it's just becoming aware of how you're feeling can actually allow you to relax and feel better. And then practicing gratitude. Gratitude is one of the best things that you can do to reduce stress in your life. It increases your appreciation of all the good in your life. And if you guys need some help with meditation, mindfulness, gratitude. I have a free video course that I put together. If you want that, let me know. I'll send you a link so you can get signed up for that course. But it's like 8 different days. Each day you learn a new either meditation or mindfulness practice. Most of them you can do in like 10 minutes or less. It's pretty easy stuff. But if meditation is not part of your life, what's up, BJ, David, Angel? If meditation is not a part of your life, I highly suggest you give it a try and make it a part of your life. I got some questions that just came in here. Suzanne says that there's a free open to the public spring on 164th Street in Linwood, Washington. So you can just drive up, stand in line. So that's awesome. If you can find a local spring where you live, that's the best source of water, because that water, it's charged. It has a higher energy to it. I was actually in Albany like 2 weeks ago giving a talk, and the town I stayed in, a suburb of Albany, is called Ballston Spa. And the reason it's called Ballston Spa is because they have these natural springs there where they have a bunch of spas. But I was driving down the road and I saw this old looking building and it said Iron Springs on it or something. So I pulled over to check it out, and there's just like a pipe coming out of this building with water running. I Googled it to make sure it was safe. It was safe. I filled up some bottles of water that I had in my car. It was kind of slightly carbonated, kind of slightly sulfur, but I drank that water and I could instantly just kind of feel better from drinking that water. So that's a great tip, Suzanne. Thanks for sharing that. Any of you on the West Coast that live in Washington, it's way out of my way. I'm in New York. But if you guys live in Washington, then check out that spring on 164th Street in Linwood, Washington. And that's something super healthy you can do. So another thing you want to do is sun. First thing in the morning, you want to get natural sunlight in your eyes, and you don't want your glasses on because you don't want to block any of the sun's rays. So ideally, you want to watch the sunrise, because that's one of the best things you can do to reset your circadian rhythm. Remember, your cortisol has a circadian rhythm, and it's aligned to the day and dark cycles. Speaking of circadian rhythm, I don't know if anybody saw this, but the 2017 Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology was for circadian rhythm. And your circadian rhythm, I mean, what they show with all of the research going back 30, 40 years, is that your circadian rhythm controls your growth, your metabolism, your hormones. It's behind everything. I mean, anybody that's seen my talks before, I'm always talking about mitochondria and circadian rhythm. I'm hoping that now that circadian rhythm won a Nobel Prize, more doctors will take notice and educate their patients on the importance of minding their circadian rhythm. Because when your circadian rhythm is off, you're off. When your cortisol is off because your circadian rhythm's off, you're off, and you run into all of these different symptoms that we're talking about. So what else can we do? So sun first thing in the morning. At night, I probably said this 10 times. I'm going to keep saying it because it's that important. You need to block blue light. So you need to be wearing those orange dorky glasses. It's getting kind of dark where I live soon, so probably the next talk I give, I'll be in my orange glasses. But once the sun goes down where I live, I wear my orange glasses. It makes a huge difference with sleep. If you have adrenal fatigue and you do not do that, you will not heal your adrenal fatigue, because you can't fix your circadian rhythm if you don't fix your light environment. Next, I'm going to talk about some supplements. And everybody always wants to know, I get asked a lot, what supplements do you take? Everyone wants to know, what's the best supplement to take? And I'm not a huge supplement hound. I used to have bottles lined up of supplements. And once I learned this other stuff to align myself with nature, I got rid of most of those supplements. I still do take a few. One supplement I still do a lot is either curcumin, which is a derivative of turmeric, or turmeric. So one of the best things you can do is get into the habit of cooking with turmeric. So when I make eggs, I sprinkle turmeric on my eggs. When I make seafood, or other meats, I sprinkle turmeric on those meats. Turmeric is fat soluble, so you want to always consume it with a fat, otherwise it's just going to go through your body. Pepper also makes it more bioavailable, so your body can utilize it. So always add pepper to your curcumin or turmeric. Another great herb is resveratrol. Quercetin is another great herb. Green tea extract, or EGCG, is another great herb to help with adrenal fatigue. Green tea extract is high in L-theanine, which is also good for adrenal fatigue. Something I do, this is one of my hacks. Another compound that's really good for adrenal fatigue is phosphatidylcholine. So some natural sources are egg yolks, meats, shrimp, and fish. So you want to be eating, lots of quality meats. When I say quality meats, pastured raised, not just the special at Giant or Walmart. You want to avoid factory farm meat. That's going to make you worse. But quality meats, quality seafood, wild caught seafood. Avoid the bigger fish, like tuna, swordfish. And you can also supplement phosphatidylcholine in the form of, you want to make sure you get non-GMO lecithin. So you can do non-GMO soy lecithin, or better yet, do sunflower lecithin, which is a great plant source of phosphatidylcholine. But here's a hack. I don't normally share this, but I've got a good crowd on tonight, so I'm going to share it with you guys. But I take my blender, I fill it up to the blades with water. I do a tablespoon of this lecithin. I do a teaspoon of turmeric. So I just buy turmeric by the pound on Amazon, organic turmeric. And I do a teaspoon of resveratrol. And you can buy resveratrol by the pound as Japanese knotweed. And it tastes horrible, but you put that in your blender, you blend it on high for 2 to 3 minutes, and it's kind of a poor man's liposomal turmeric. So you can spend a lot of money to get liposomal herbs, or you can do this hack to do it pretty cheap. But I'll do it for 2 to 3 minutes, and I'll pour it in a glass, and I'll chug it down. Oh, I'll do a few grinds of pepper too. And the phosphatidylcholine is a fat. So you're getting that extra absorption of the turmeric with the fat, but chug it down, chase it with some water. And if I have extra aches and pains, I can, within 5 to 10 minutes, I can feel a reduction from doing that. So it's kind of a cheaper way to supplement with those herbs. But quercetin's another great herb that you can use, also very anti-inflammatory. Some other herbs that are good in addition to that are things like ashwagandha, trying to think, fotai. It's been a while since I've done the different herbs. But ashwagandha, fotai, maca. So there are different adaptogenic herbs. Those can also be helpful as well. But you need to be doing these other things in addition. You can't just take the herbs and expect to get better, especially if you have stage 3 adrenal fatigue. Next is cold water face dunks. So one of the best ways to get your paraventricular nucleus aligned and working better is to fill your sink or a bucket up with ice water and dunk your face in it. And I don't know if anybody saw the Facebook Live I did with my good friend Ryan Gavlik, but Ryan is doing this cold thermogenesis challenge. And I was talking to him today. He just launched it on Monday, and I just called him to see how it's going. And he told me people are absolutely loving it. Like people who never thought in a million years they would get themselves to submerge their face in ice water are doing it. And it's causing them, because they're kind of pushing themselves to do this one thing, it's causing them to take all these other actions that they've been putting off. But one girl lost 4 pounds because she's doing this, and instead of at night one of the things he was telling me, instead of like munching on a bowl of cereal in front of her TV at night, she's going for a run or a walk. But just from doing this for 4 days, this girl has lost 4 pounds. So that's amazing. But people are telling him like, oh, I can't believe it. This feels so good. So if you've never done this, this is one of the best things you can do. Fill up your sink with ice water, hold your breath, submerge your face in there, and just do that 4 or 5 times for as long as you can do it. And, you know, from talking with Ryan, this challenge is going so well for him. I'm thinking about doing one myself. So if you guys would be interested in that, put ice in the comments. And if I get enough interest, I'm going to do this cold water challenge, because people that are taking it up and doing it are having just awesome benefits. So cold water face dunks. Next, this is another top hack of mine that I don't normally share, but oxytocin. So most people that have heard of oxytocin know that it's the love hormone. You make oxytocin when you shake somebody's hand. So that's why when, you know, people meet, you shake their hand, because it forms a connection by increasing your oxytocin. Hugging somebody also increases oxytocin. Breastfeeding. So one of the ways that a child bonds with their mother is by breastfeeding. That builds up oxytocin. One of the best ways as an adult to build up massive amounts of oxytocin, because it's very healthy, is to have an orgasm. So ideally, you want to have an orgasm with a partner. And to do this for health reasons and to help combat adrenal fatigue, you want to do it in your bed at night with the lights off. So normally I'm a proponent of lights on, you know, when you're having your loving or whatever. But if you are dealing with adrenal fatigue or something, you want to do it with the lights off. What that does is it builds a whole bunch of oxytocin, and oxytocin converts your serotonin to dopamine almost instantly. Normally, I'm sorry, not to dopamine, to melatonin. So that improves the quality of your sleep. When you sleep better and have higher levels of melatonin, your body does all of this repair, and it's a great hack to speed up your healing. Now, if you don't have a partner to do this with, you can do it manually. So ladies, you can rub your nipples. You can also, you know, stimulate an orgasm manually. No porn. So trying to have an orgasm, you know, with blue light in the computer is a major fail. It needs to be manually in the dark in your bed. And this can be very helpful for speeding up reversal of adrenal fatigue. What's next? Sleep is critical. So on that same note, you need to get to bed early, ideally before 10. You know, if you can get to bed like 9. And now that it's getting darker earlier, it's a lot easier to go to bed earlier. But you want to go to bed earlier, get up with the sun. That's really ideal. Laughter. So if you can watch, you know, some YouTube videos, and make sure you do it during the day so you're not impacting your sleep. Read some jokes, hang out with somebody that makes you laugh. The more you can laugh, the less stress you're going to have. You can't be laughing and be stressed out at the same time. So the more you can laugh, the better you're going to do. And let's talk about some things. Oh, for one other thing, a lot of people have chronic thirst that have adrenal fatigue. One of the best things you can do is drink a lot of water, and you want to add salt to that water. Okay, so add a quality sea salt like a Celtic salt or Himalayan sea salt. Start off with like a 1/4 teaspoon, and actually you can work up to about a teaspoon, and that is going to help your body hydrate a little better. So is this stuff making sense to you guys? I know I'm talking fast. I get excited about this stuff, and I just kind of start to ramble about it. But if you have any questions, leave me a comment, and I will address it. But let's see some of these questions. Oh, Suzanne asked, what was the other ingredient? So I said lecithin. You want to make sure you use a non-GMO lecithin. And the other one is resveratrol. So resveratrol, it's made in like the skin of grapes. Most purple fruits have resveratrol. So blueberries are a good source. Grapes, red or purple grapes. What else? Cranberries. But another source is Japanese knotweed, which, as Susan mentioned, is a noxious weed where she lives. It is where I live too. So it's a very invasive species. It turns out it has some very amazing benefits. It's a great source of resveratrol. Resveratrol has tons of anti-aging properties. You can buy the supplement. It's pretty expensive. If you want to do it and save a little money, then the way to do it is to get this Japanese knotweed. It tastes completely horrible. And, if you're really sick and you want to get better, then some of the medicine you have to take is not going to taste great. Let's see. Angel Zyra says salt is bad for hypertension. Yeah, but it's good for hydration. So you got to kind of pick your battles. But, if you've got really high blood pressure, then salt may not be the best option for you. So let's talk about some things that we want to avoid. Blue light is at the top of the list. So at night, you need to be wearing your orange glasses. Caffeine. So a lot of people with adrenal fatigue can't function without caffeine. You're going to have to kind of push yourself through it. But just the act of getting outside and spending 10, 15 minutes getting natural sunlight in your eyes is going to help wake you up. So obviously caffeine is in coffee. You want to avoid coffee. Caffeine is also in chocolate. So you're going to have to avoid chocolate if you want to recover from adrenal fatigue. And once you recover, you can enjoy chocolate again. I cut all that stuff out for a while. Now I do drink coffee on occasion, but I don't need coffee anymore to be energetic. If I do drink it, it's because I like the taste and I enjoy just a good cup of coffee. I do eat chocolate occasionally too. I'll eat like 85 to 90% chocolate. But when I had adrenal fatigue, I cut all that stuff out. Any kind of stimulating drugs. So if you partake in, illegal drugs, cocaine is a major no-no. Meth, I hope no one's doing either of those drugs, but that's a major no-no if you have adrenal fatigue. Prescription medications like Ritalin. What's the other ADD one? I forget the name of it, but it's very stimulating. You need to get off all those drugs too if you want to reverse adrenal fatigue. Overtraining is another big no-no. So the first time I got over adrenal fatigue, I was feeling really good. I started doing CrossFit, and at first it was great. My confidence had been down in the dumps. I started doing CrossFit. It actually, it really boosted my confidence because, I got totally ripped. I looked awesome, but after doing it for a while, I started feeling very run down. And if you chronically do CrossFit, I think once a week is fine. If you have adrenal fatigue, it's not fine. But if you're healthy, I think once, maybe twice a week is fine. But people that chronically do CrossFit and get their labs checked have very low levels of, testosterone and other hormones, for example. So overtraining can be a big no-no. I mentioned processed foods, grains. I would avoid all grains if reversing adrenal fatigue. And corn is another grain. Staying up late is a big no-no. Skipping breakfast. So skipping breakfast can be good if you're healthy. Intermittent fasting. If you have, stage 2 or 3 adrenal fatigue, you want to eat breakfast. Otherwise, you're just stressing your body even more. You're increasing your cortisol. You can drive your body into these dangerous places. And then high glycemic fruits. So there's a lot more you can do. I covered all of the major things. So does what I shared so far, does it make sense to you guys? Give me a yes if it makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know if you have a question. But try these recommendations. They've been very effective for me personally. They've helped a lot of people that I've worked with in my consulting business. And give them a try. Let me know how it works. And if you need some help with this, reach out to me and we can set up a strategy session to see if we're a good fit to work together. I don't take on everyone that I meet with. Some people just aren't a good fit, But if you like me and I like you and I think I can help you and I think you're going to do what you have to do to get better, then we can start to work together. So feel free to connect with me on Messenger and see if I can help you out. So I'm going to close this one out. This was kind of a long one. And I'm trying to keep these around 20 minutes, but sometimes it just takes longer to get the information out. So I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about next week. If you have any ideas for things that you're dealing with that you could use some help with, let me know in the comments, or send me a message, and maybe that will be a topic. But you know what? Since Circadian Rhythm just won the Nobel Prize, that's probably going to be the topic for next week, because that's a really hot topic. It's really important. I've touched on it on a lot of other talks, but maybe it would make sense for me to go into kind of more depth with that and cover it. So thanks so much for joining. Again, if you're catching the replay, leave me a question if something is unclear, and I'll respond to it as soon as I can. And if you know anybody dealing with any of these symptoms, either tag them in the comments or share this on your wall and help somebody else out. So thanks everybody who joined me on the call. It was great having you guys, and thanks for your questions and comments, and I will see you on the next call.